So, where do we start?
Hey, I like your enthusiasm, Sarah. I'm going to show you how to use the gospel media that works with a mobile phone, even if it's just a regular phone. Your friend doesn't need to have a smartphone, computer, or internet access. In most parts of the world, people don't have smartphones, so they can't use apps. In many places, people have phones that look like this.
I used to have a phone like that. It couldn't do that much, but it was, like, indestructible.
Hey man, don't knock the feature phone. Basic phones like this are smarter than you think. In poorer nations, phones like this are by far the most common. They may be simpler than what you're used to, but most of them can still play audio and video, and even share files with other phones.
But why can't we just bring a bunch of Bibles to leave with people after sharing the gospel? I mean, we could even get text Bibles onto their phones, right?
Great question, Sarah. You can use a text Bible, sure, but many of the unreached are oral learners. They may not know how to read, or they may prefer to learn by hearing. It's like Paul said, faith comes by hearing.
That makes sense. I've heard that many people from smaller tribes or people groups don't have access to education in their language, and they may not even have a way to write their language.
You've got it, Sarah. I can tell you've been doing some research. Good work. Back to our humble friend, the feature phone. Like I said, many people don't have decent internet access, so we have to get the files onto their phones without using the internet. Most mobile phones have a slot for what's called a micro SD card. If you give people one of these little cards, they can put it in their phones and watch or listen to gospel media.
Wow! So we'll just put files onto their SIM cards?
Actually, no. SIM cards aren't the same as micro SD cards.
What's the difference?
Micro SD cards hold media files, like audio and video clips. SIM cards, on the other hand, give your device its phone number and allows you to make calls on a particular network like T-Mobile. Don't worry about SIM cards. We'll be using micro SD cards to give files to people who have basic feature phones.
So, are micro SD cards the same as SD cards?
Yes, well, sort of. Cameras use SD memory cards to store pictures. Micro SD cards are smaller memory cards that are used in mobile phones. Most mobile phones have micro SD card slots. The majority of people in the developing world don't have computers, so they use micro SD cards in their phones to store their family photos, videos, and other things that are important to them. Now that I think of it, check out the video my friend made. She met this group of pastors in India who were willing to make huge sacrifices to make room for audio Bibles on their phones' micro SD cards.
My daughter went to India last year, she and her husband and a team from their church. And they knew to take an audio New Testament and a Jesus film with them on micro SD cards in order to transfer to the remote pastors. They were not surprised that every pastor wanted it on their cell phones. They noticed time and again many of these pastors' micro SD cards were filled with family photographs, important events, and there was no room for an audio New Testament. So they would say, well, sir, you don't have room. What should we do? And the pastor said, without hesitation, wipe the card clean. We need the audio New Testaments in the language of the people. We can take it to the people. So the stories are that pastor after pastor had their cards wiped clean. Pastor after pastor took these audio New Testaments and Jesus films in their native languages to the remote villages throughout that region of India. And we'll know the end of the matter in heaven one day, peradventure. But such is the hunger that those people have, and we don't want to neglect it.
So, what you guys need to do before you leave is load up a bunch of micro SD cards with gospel media to give out to people.
I hear that Hindi is pretty widely spoken where we'll be staying. We might also visit an area where people speak Gujarati. Do you know of any videos or recordings in those languages?
Of course! Let's download some audio and video files in those languages. There's an organization called Global Recording Network, or GRN, that has media in 6,000 languages or dialects. Last night, I wrote to one of my missionary friends in India to ask if she knows about any other media in local languages that I can download to share with people on their mobiles. She gave me a short list, so we'll download that too.
Do you have any of those micro SD card things here?
I do. I just bought some last week. We also need one of these. This adapter allows me to plug a micro SD card into my laptop's SD card slot. Sometimes they'll include an adapter like this as an add-on when you buy a micro SD card.
That's great, but I'm pretty sure my computer doesn't have an SD card slot.
Not a problem, Jose. If your computer doesn't have a port for an SD card, you can always use a USB adapter.
So it's just like using a flash drive, huh?
Exactly. Now let's get those files we downloaded onto this micro SD card.
Where's the micro SD card slot on my iPhone? It's gotta be here somewhere.
Nope. iPhones don't have SD card slots. But you don't need to worry about that. Remember, most of the people you meet in the towns you'll be visiting have a basic phone or an Android phone, not an iPhone. They'll be able to use micro SD cards even though you can't.
What do we do if we want to share gospel media with people who have iPhones?
iPhones are more common in richer areas. If people have iPhones, they probably have internet access. In that case, you can just share the apps that we downloaded earlier.
Oh, right.
Just to review, you can email or use the app share feature to give the files to people with smartphones or anyone who has internet access. You can share micro SD cards with people who have feature phones and most smartphones.
Got it.
આપણને પાપની માફી મળશે.
That was so fast.
I know, right? You can copy that card and take a bunch on your trip if you want to. In fact, they're so small that you can keep a ton of them in an Altoids tin. Super easy to carry in your pocket or purse.
Now that we know how to download and share the files on a micro SD card, do we just give them away to everyone?
Right now, this micro SD card has all the files you want to share, but because they're a few dollars each, you can only give away so many cards. You should only give cards to people who are really hungry for God's word. There's one more thing we need to do. We need to make the files on this micro SD card go viral.
Viral? I thought we were supposed to avoid anything viral. Didn't we get some shots for that?
Yeah, different kind of viral. Have you heard of Bluetooth?